We'll start in just a moment, give people a chance to get on as we are now a little bit later than the usual time. We're an hour late as some school duties. Just one moment and we'll get started. Okay. Good afternoon, and today is Thursday, January 14th, 2021. It is Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the beginning of the month of Shvat. Today is a special day because it's the beginning of the month, but today is also Thursday that it is customary as we review the Torah reading of the week. Well, let me begin with a story. A Jewish guy walks into synagogue, Erev Yom Kippur, right before Yom Kippur. He's feeling great about himself. This year, he was generous. He was kind. He didn't hurt anybody's feelings. He didn't do anything wrong. What should he celebrate Yom Kippur for? What's he going to ask God for? To forgive for what? For who? He's been a wonderful guy. So he goes over to the rabbi. And the rabbi tells him, and he tells the rabbi, what am I asking forgiveness for? I've been wonderful. So the rabbi says, you know what? If you want to do a sin, right next door to the synagogue, there's a guy, he's a mafionaire. He makes everybody's life miserable. Go and give him a good beating. Beat the living daylights out of that guy. You'll have a sin before Yom Kippur. Like this, you're able to go into Yom Kippur happily asking God for forgiveness. So he goes next door to the synagogue. He finds the fellow, he gives him such a beating. As he's walking out, the wife of the fellow tells this guy, wow, you did such a mitzvah. Can't tell you how much I appreciate what you did to this guy. You see, even when he tried doing something wrong, he did a mitzvah. When we talk about life, there's many different things in life that we sometimes don't value as important. And there's many different things in life which we can sometimes say, what is it needed for? Why did God even create it? What's its purpose? What do we even need it for? And in this week's Torah reading, we go through the different plagues that God did to the Egyptians for their terrible behavior, for what they did to the Jewish people. And going through the plagues, each one of them becomes more extreme, more extravagant, and abstract than the next. But from all the plagues, there's only one plague that seemingly doesn't leave Egypt. Blood comes and goes. Lice comes and goes. Pestilence comes and goes. Hail comes and goes. Locust comes and goes. There's one plague that stays in Egypt. And that's the plague of the frogs. Now, what are frogs? You know, frogs in China today are an appetizer. People eat frogs. People pickle frogs. Back then, the Egyptians also pickled frogs. So what was it about frogs that it was a plague? The Jewish people didn't eat them, of course. But the Egyptians, they were pickling them, enjoying them. What was the purpose? What was behind the rationale about this concept of the frogs? Not only that, the frogs was the only plague that stayed in Egypt after the plague occurred. The frog was one of the plagues where even after the plague officially ended, the frog still stayed there. As Torah uses the terminology, they will also stay in the sea. That means that God believes that there's a eternal message, not only about the in general concept of the plagues, but frogs in particular. What was it about frogs that God sees that we today can learn from? There was once this fellow that used to come to me all the time, and he tells me, frog is the meaning, forever rely on God. Nice acronym. I thought I would share that. But that's a side note. But what is it? But if we look at the plagues weren't just to punish the Egyptians. The plagues were there to take Egypt and dismantle it. to take the Jews out of Egypt, but even more so to take Egypt out of the Jews. The Jews, after 210 years of slavery, have become so assimilated, so sunk into the depths of the idolatry and the behaviors and the mindset of Egypt. The plagues were there to show them God's hand, to show them God's miraculous events, to show them that they were not lost or forgotten, but that God thinks about every single one of them. And how much more so, the frogs pointed that out. Why? Think about it. Every single creature that exists in this world, you can find some type of reason why it exists. Snakes and scorpions, they have poisonous venom. Animals are used in the field, in the wild, they attract each other, they do things with each other. I guarantee you, tomorrow, if 1 million frogs die, nobody would sneeze. Nobody would lose any sleep from it. What do frogs do? They jump in the water, jump out of the water, jump like this, jump like that. What are frogs? Other than a Chinese appetizer. Who needs frogs? What are frogs? In fact, the frog asks God, why did you create me? What am I needed for? What purpose do I serve? And over here, what does God say? God tells the frog, there's nothing unimportant in this world. There's nothing insignificant in this world. Every single thing that God created has a purpose. And this was the only plague that stuck around even after the plague was over. Telling the person and telling the frog and telling every creature God's message. Every single thing has a unique quality and purpose that only it can accomplish and nothing else can do for it. I cannot do your job. You cannot do my job. Everything in this world has a unique quality and mission, and nothing is ever forgotten. I'll tell you a story about a fellow by the name of Ovadia Cyrus. He was a Jewish merchant who made Aliyah from Iraq to Israel, and he was in the textile business. And as the textile business began to grow and expand, especially in places like Indonesia, he decided to move with his family to Bali, Indonesia. And as you know, Indonesia is not a Jewish country, it's a very Muslim country. And as Cyrus moved there, he and his wife and his young daughter, Chana. Cyrus living there for such a long time, they knew very little about Judaism. And boy, did his daughter Chana also know almost nothing about Judaism. And as Chana grew up in a Muslim country, she knew nothing about Judaism, and she had no relationship with Judaism. So eventually, she then got to know her Muslim neighbor, and the two got married. Chana had a child, but she knew that her child was Jewish, and she gave her child's name David. And then she had another two children as well. And they went out, and they knew that they were Jewish, but at the same time, they had no Jewish background, no Jewish upbringing, or anything of the sort. Next 2 years have passed, and David's getting older, and David's becoming bar mitzvah. But what happens now? Where's she going to get a bar mitzvah for her son? Her son knows nothing about Judaism. In Bali, Indonesia, there's one little synagogue. And she went on the eve of Yom Kippur to pray in the synagogue. But then she decided, my son's becoming bar mitzvah, let me go back there. Let me see. Maybe I can find something for my son. And it was in the middle of a Tuesday, in the middle of the week, she goes to the synagogue, and she finds in the synagogue a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And she says, Lubavitcher Rebbe, I know you care for Jews all over the world. Please take care of my son David. As she walks out of the synagogue, she's about to close the door. All of a sudden, a chassid by the name of David Skirder from London, England, is standing at the door. What happened? Well, this chassid was also a textile fellow, and he would travel around the world, and the Rebbe told him that wherever he goes, he should search out and see how the Jews of that place are doing. not only go there for materialistic business, but also spiritual business. And so she met him. She told him about her plight. And little David was on the next flight with Mr. Skirter back to London, England, and was prepared for his bar mitzvah the way a good Jewish boy should. We read many phrases of our sages. It's phrases that tell us not to be egotistic, not to be narcissistic, to think about others. But sometimes it is our humility that may hurt us as well. False humility, when we don't recognize our talents and our qualities that God has given us. God believes in us at times more than we believe in ourselves. We have to believe in God because God believes in us, but even more so. There is no such thing as a forgotten Jew or a forgotten person. Every single creature in the world has a unique quality and mission. Just like the frog, God said, it's not that the frog has no purpose. The frog has a purpose, and therefore it was still around. And its purpose was to teach and educate the Egyptians and the Jews. So too, God is charges us with a mission. We are never forgotten. We are never left alone. There is no lonely person in the world. Every single person, God is looking out for them. The question is only, are you looking out for yourself? Are you cognizant of the fact that God gave you a mission, gave you a task, and are you doing it? God believes in you more than you believe in yourself. Learn from the frog. Just like the frog had a mission and went all out, as the Torah tells us, went into the ovens, into every place just to do what God wanted it to do. So too, every single one of us has a task and a mission, and we got to do it at our best. God bless you. Have a good Shabbos. Wishing you the very best. To remember to be like a frog. Always rely on God. All the best. God bless you. Have a good Shabbos. And God willing, we'll see you again next week, Monday, lunch break with the Rabbi at 1 p.m.